the Peachtree Road Farmers Market and today's demo. We're going to talk about cabbage, squash, and peaches, but first I want to talk about our new restaurant. So we have a new restaurant that we just opened up about 2 months ago called Linton's in the Atlanta Botanical Gardens. We're closed on Mondays. We do lunch and then an early dinner on Tuesday. The garden closes at 7. And then Wednesday through Sunday, we're open lunch and dinner. If you have a membership, you can get into the garden during the daytime with your membership. At nighttime, there's a Chihuly exhibit, which you can also see in the daytime. But at nighttime, there is an extra charge, and I believe it's $15 for members, $21 for non-members. But the restaurant is about, like I said, 2 months old, and it's doing great. And one of the things that we do there, obviously, is we have a strong commitment to vegetables, but a strong commitment to local produce and local farmers. We have an edible garden in the Botanical Gardens that we get some produce from on a weekly basis that we try to preserve and add to dishes as best we can. That's kind of where I came up with this idea for the chutney that we're going to put on the cabbages today. So when I think about, today, one of the vegetables that I love, and right now it's so delicious, is this beautiful cabbage that we got from Burge Plantation. It is really sweet, it's really tender, and it's amazing. And when I think about cabbage, as I was thinking about how to come up with what I was going to do today, you know, a lot of times when you think about cabbage and you think about what your family has made for you in the past in cabbage, everybody either braises it or they try to ferment it and make sauerkraut out of it. And really, usually when you think about cabbage, you think about it those two ways, right? But there's a lot of other ways you can cook cabbage, and what I'm going to show you today is one of them. So we actually do this on our menu at the restaurant. We have a plate that is a vegetable plate, and the highlight is the cabbage. And whenever I'm putting together vegetable plates, I like to pick one vegetable and highlight that as the centerpiece, the same way that I would a piece of fish or a piece of meat on a normal entree. And so the centerpiece is going to be this beautiful cabbage. So what we're going to do today is I'm going to blacken the cabbage, okay? And so first, we're going to take this little head. We're going to cut it in half. And just leaving that nice, beautiful core together, I'm going to go ahead and cut it in half again. And then cut it in half again. So basically, we're cutting this into eighths. And if the cabbage is bigger, you can still do it the same way. You'll have a much larger piece, obviously, so you can maybe just use one piece as opposed to using 2 or 3 whenever you build a dish. You can slice it into 1/16 if it's a really big head, and it'll still work the same way. So we have this beautiful, beautiful cabbage. I mean, it's really nice. It's really tender. Has everybody tried this cabbage yet? Have you tried it? I'm gonna just cut some up and pass it around for you guys to try. It really is amazing, and it's amazing just to even eat it raw, which you don't really think about tasting cabbage that way, but it's just, there's a beautiful tenderness to it. There's an amazing sweetness that comes out of this cabbage. And it's really, whenever you're working with vegetables, working with anything, it's always good to taste it, know what it tastes like. So when you're cooking it, you have an idea of what you're starting with. And this cabbage is no different. But it is pretty amazing to try something in its raw form and then taste it again in its cooked form. So I'm going to pass this around and let you all just kind of pick a little piece of this cabbage and eat it. It is so delicious. So what I'm going to do with this cabbage, I've got my cast iron skillet going. I've got some Creole seasoning. Now, I make my own Creole seasoning, but you can buy Creole seasoning. This is one that came from Whole Foods. It's a little Cajun spice. There's another one that is labeled a blackening spice. Typically, that'll have sugar in it, like a brown sugar. I don't usually like to put brown sugar in mine. I just like the actual flavor of the Creole seasoning, which is paprika and garlic, black pepper, cayenne, thyme, oregano. So I'm going to take this cabbage and just season one side of it like this. And I get a nice layer of seasoning on it. I get a cast iron skillet going. I'm just going to put a little bit of oil in there, not much. I don't want to fry it. I just want enough oil in there so it doesn't stick. And I'm going to put this seasoned side down. Make sure there's a little bit of oil in there to kind of go around the cabbage. And we're going to sear this up and just get a real nice dark char on it, okay? Now while that is searing, I am going to make a chutney to go on top of it. And so when I was thinking about this dish and a hot summer day, I was thinking about what vegetables are in season right now. And if you got a CSA, which all this came from a CSA, you're going to have cabbage, squash, and peaches in it. And so how can you incorporate all three of those into a dish? And also what I was thinking is, how can I make this component cold so that it's not a hot vegetable dish that you're eating on a hot summer day? This cabbage you can do ahead of time and just let it chill or let it become room temperature, and it eats very well at room temperature, so you're not eating it really hot. The squash and the peaches are just finely chopped and then macerated with a blackberry jam. And so I'm not going to cook the squash at all. You know, right now when you look at a lot of the summer vegetables that we have, it's still early in the season and they're very tender and just naturally tender and sweet. And so there's not a lot we have to do to this vegetable. It's already so delicious. I mean, you guys tasted that cabbage. It's really, really good as is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to dice this squash up into a small dice. I do want it to be small because we're going to macerate it and we're going to let it sit overnight. And the sugars and the vinegar and the blackberry jam are going to break down that squash a little bit and soften it. But all that flavor, that natural raw flavor, is just going to still be right there in the squash. All right, so we're going to check our squash. It's going to go just, or our cabbage. It's going to go a little bit longer. I want a little more sear on there. All right, we're blackening it, so we want a really good char. We really want to caramelize that spice blend that's on it. So for the squash, I'm going to just kind of take my knife and just cut it into little planks like this. Now this squash, these baby squash, there's not a lot of seeds in them, which is really nice. You don't have to scoop all those seeds out. If you have a bigger piece of squash, just cut it kind of around that core so that you're not getting all the seeds. There's nothing wrong with the seeds. They just become a little bit softer, and there's a little bit more flavor around that outer area and that yellow part of the squash. So we got this beautiful blackened cabbage, so we got this nice sear on it. Now this cabbage is nice and sweet, it's nice and tender. Another step that I'll do with the cabbage, and I've put it in the recipe, if the cabbage is a little bit firmer, is to try to steam it first or blanch it first. Now the idea is just to cook it a little bit to make it a little bit softer. Now when you do that, you're not trying to cook the cabbage, you're just trying to gently soften it a little bit. You're cooking it maybe a quarter of the way, so that when you eat it, it's just a little bit softer. And so there's a couple ways you can do that. One, you can put it into a hotel pan or any kind of baking dish like this. We've got it cut into quarters. Put a little bit of water in the pan, cover it with foil, and bake it for 20 minutes at 300 degrees. All you're doing is you want to create just a little bit of heat and a little steam action just to soften it. Or you can do it, you can blanch it the way that you would blanch any other vegetable in a pot of salted water and just gently drop it in there, and then after that move it into an ice water. So the squash, I'm going to dice the squash. Nice small dice. I'm going to do the same thing with the peaches. Now these peaches are nice and ripe, which is great. We don't have to cut them as small as the squash because the squash we want to soften. This is going to soften, but it's already beautiful. It doesn't need to macerate. So we're just going to chop this up, and it's just roughly chopping it. You don't have to make it perfect, or doesn't have to be this beautiful brunoise. It's beautiful as it is, no matter how you chop it. It's just delicious. So we're going to throw that in here. So we have the squash, we've got our peaches, then we got a little blackberry jam. Now this blackberry jam is from Fairywood Thicket Farm right here. A lot of times I find, and I use this a lot at the house when I'm doing salad dressings and things like that. I'll get some jam, I'll open it up, I'll use it on like a cheese plate or something like that, or make a sandwich, and then it kind of sits in the refrigerator, the cupboard for the next year and a half until I come back and say, wow, I still have this. One of the great things that you can do to utilize it is make slaws with it, which, you know, to me this is kind of a salad that we're dressing to put on top of the cabbage. Or if you make salad dressings at your house, a lot of times I'll make just a simple salad dressing. I'll just take mustard, some vinegar, and some oil and whisk it together. You throw a little bit of this blackberry jam in there, and then you got this beautiful dressing for your salad, right? And so always think about that when you're opening your fridge and you're thinking about what do I make tonight. You know, you can pull a few ingredients out and kind of whisk them together, and it makes just a really nice element to something that you eat every day, which can just be a salad. So I'm just going to take a spoonful of this. Now this jam is already nice and sweet. It also has a nice vinegar element to it. I'm going to make sure I get some of this juice in there. Okay, I'm going to mix that up. We're going to season it with a little bit of salt, a little bit of olive oil. So, you know, in my mind I'm thinking this is kind of like a salad, so this is what I would do to a salad. I would add vinegar to it. I would add something sweet to it, something acidic to it. And then we've got this beautiful basil. Obviously it's summertime, there's going to be basil everywhere. And I want this to be nice and fresh. We're just going to chop it up. It doesn't have to be, you know, thinly chopped. It can be nice chunks. We're just going to stir this up like this, and then put it in the fridge and let it sit. You can let it sit for a couple of hours if you're making a day of, or you can let it sit overnight. You can let it sit for 3 days. Hey Rob, how's it going?
Hey,
Look at the baby. You keep it in the fridge. It'll just start to break down. It'll continue to break down. You can hold it. It's, you know, it's got that sugar in it. It's got that acidic syrup from the blackberries. It's got oil in it, so it'll sit for days, and it'll just continue to macerate and just get better. So we got this beautiful blackened cabbage. There's a wonderful cheesemaker here in the market, Woodsman and Wife, and we use a lot of his cheeses in the restaurant. And one of my favorites is a ricotta that he's doing right now. And I love to use it fresh, just in salads, just spread it on the bottom of the plate and just put anything on top of it. And so, you know, when you have something like a blackened cabbage, there's going to be a spice to it. There's going to be heat to it, right? We've got a lot of cayenne there, and you sear it up real nice. This ricotta is sort of a nice creaminess that's going to help cool that spice a little bit while you're eating it. You know, it's just this nice, refreshing cooling of the spice. And then you're going to get this nice, sweet, plump peach and blackberry to really kind of finish it out. And so when I'm thinking about it, I think about all those flavors together. And you can even put a little lettuce on top of the plate to make it a salad. And ideally, you wouldn't want to add more lemon juice or olive oil to the cabbage or add it to this because it's here. So this cabbage is nice and spicy. It's got a sweetness to it. This cheese helps cool it down a little bit and cool the mouth from the spice. And then the peaches really brings a lot of acidic, sweet sort of explosion to kind of complement it, which is really lovely. Which, you know, and right now we're doing a very similar version of this at the restaurant. So I'm just gonna just put a little bit of this ricotta on there, and this is a fresh cheese. You can serve it right out of the fridge. You can leave it sit out at room temperature. I like it room temperature, so I'll let it sit out for an hour before I use it. And then we're just gonna spoon this beautiful peach and blackberry chutney right over top of it, and we got this lovely blackened cabbage and peach dish, which, you know, it's so perfect for summertime because this is what's growing right now, you know? And how do we use those things? A lot of times you get these beautiful peaches and you just want to eat them because they're so delicious. And you maybe don't think about, well, let me chop this up and just throw it into something. Put it on top of, I don't know, a pork chop if you're eating a pork chop. But then to take these peaches and that blackberry jam, which is also in season right now, those blackberries. So you should be, if you're buying blackberries from the Bennett's, you should make jam out of it. Put a jar up in your cupboard. That way you can use it throughout the year. You know, this cabbage is really small and sweet and tender right now. In the next month, it's going to be much bigger. It's going to be a little bit firmer. And so, you know, right now is the time to experience this cabbage at this stage, and then experience it again in a month from now and see the difference and how it changes, and taste it raw, and then cook it and taste it. It's really amazing to see that flavor profile through it. Well, we got some plates ready to go to kind of pass around for you guys to try. Does anybody have any questions or any thoughts? You could do any kind of jam you want. You could do blueberry, you could do strawberry. There's no right or wrong answer. It's going to be delicious. And so instead of using peaches, you can use apples and let it macerate a little bit longer. You know, obviously blueberry jam, strawberry jam, and blackberry jam are really the three that you're going to see the most.
There's some magic between peach and blackberry.
Say again?
Blackberry and peach is
Yeah,
magic.
it really is. I mean, that just looks gorgeous right there. I just want to eat it. But there is something magical about a blackberry. You know, in the next month or so, we're going to start to get into melon season, and we're going to start having cantaloupes and watermelon. And this still works with that. You can take that watermelon, those blackberries, and mix them together the same way we just did this, and make a nice topping just to go over, you know, whether or not it's going over this cabbage or if it's just going over some fish. I mean, it would be absolutely amazing. I did. So these cabbage, the ones that I had were just a little bit larger, and so I did steam it just lightly. And like I said, and it's not about cooking it and making it soft, but it's a little bit easier to eat. And so, you know, if you have this beautiful small cabbage and that steaming step or that blanching step, maybe it's just one step too many. Go ahead and sear it first, and then just put it into a little hotel pan and just stick it in the oven for 5 minutes, and just let that heat kind of soften it a little bit. Yeah. So you know this. So if I were to take this cabbage and I thought to myself, I just seared it, it was raw. Maybe it needs to go a little bit longer. I can just put it on a little pan and just stick it in the oven for 5 minutes, pull it out, it'll be perfect. You're getting all those juices in there. You're getting all that beautiful flavor from the cabbage.
The crunch is just the exact perfect.
Yeah, and that's what you want out of this. You know, I love cabbage so much. It's really, you know, this time of the year, there's certain vegetables that I'm so excited when they come around, and you know, you don't normally hear people get excited about cabbage, and part of that is because I feel like, you know, growing up, you always ate cabbage, and it was really cooked for like 3-4 hours, and it's nice and soft, and it stinks up the whole house and all that kind of stuff. Where, you know, this is, you know, think about a coleslaw. It's nice, crisp cabbage. You know, it's raw, it's not cooked, and it's so delicious. And this kind of takes a little play on that. You know, you can, and like I said, with this cabbage, you can serve it hot, like it is now. Or you can cook it, stick it in the fridge, and get it cold, and just plate this up as a cold salad. You know, it's a fork and knife cold salad.
To keep the crunch, though, it's probably better to do it right away.
Yes.
Keep the crunchy vibe. So when you blanch it, because you said this one was blanched, you blanch it like flash.
Really quick, super
it's
fast.
still crunchy.
I want it to be, you know, if you look at this cabbage, it still seems close to raw. It's got it's a little bit loose, like it's a little bit flimsy, but it's not much. I mean, you tear it, and you can still feel how crunchy that is, you know?
Right. So it's like, what, 30 seconds?
Not even. I mean, it's 10 seconds, 15 seconds. It's in and out just to...
Like the chanterelle blanching.
Yeah, exactly. Just to just to start that cooking process. That's all you're doing.
And then after you blanch it, can you then still make coleslaw?
You could. You could. You know, one of the things about coleslaw, which is, you know, when I think about this little peach salad that I made with the squash, it's in the style of a coleslaw, where the thing about coleslaw is you shave it raw, you mix it with the mayonnaise and the sugar and the vinegar, and then you let it sit. And it helps, it breaks all that stuff down. It releases some natural juices from the cabbage. Coleslaw is better 12 hours after you made it. And now if you let it sit too long, it gets too soft and too soggy. You know, next day coleslaw's not great. But 12 hours after you've made it and it started to release some of its liquid, it softened just a little bit, that's really when coleslaw is best. And so if you were to blanch the cabbage and then shave it to make your coleslaw, you would probably want to eat it right away, because it would continue to macerate and break it down, and it might become too soft.
And then you have to sell it.
Yeah.
You blanch it in those pieces or just in half? Or?
So when I do it, I cut it into the wedges, and so I'll cut it into this wedge. You know, I leave the core on there. That way, when you blanch it, you know, you can maybe pull one leaf off. It stays just like this.
10 seconds.
You know, and the thing, you know, too, like what I was just saying a few minutes ago, if that step of blanching, because sometimes, you know, when you're at your house, you don't want to take a pot and a blanching pot and then another pot for searing, and then all of a sudden you got like, if I come to your house and cook, I use every saute pan in your house, and then you hate me because you're doing dishes for like an hour. Trust me, my mother-in-law doesn't let me cook in her kitchen. So a way to just kind of save a pan and skip that step is to go ahead and sear it first, and like I said, and just bake it in the oven just till it gets soft. That's all. You know, nothing. You don't even have to cover it with foil. You can just stick it right in the oven. Because one of the things that's too is really great is when these edges start to get crispy, and you get these little crispy, crunchy bits of the edge of the cabbage, and by putting it in the oven, you'll definitely get that. Mm-hmm.
Delicious.
Thank you. Well, thank you guys for being here. I always love coming and doing demos here from Bird Plantation.